Welcome to the overview of OneSolution MCT. This video will be split up into several sections, and from the notes at the bottom of this YouTube video you'll be able to click on chapters, hopefully, to be able to take you from one section to the other without having to scroll through and look for that. This version of MCT should be going live at the end of January 2019. Some overall enhancements of the application. This is a web-based application that will run in any browser, making it a little more ideal that it doesn't have to be a truly installed app. This makes it a little bit faster with some increased performance, and we most likely will stop doing updates, or what we used to refer to as updates, in the future. So no more updates. The way the application is getting its updates is every time we log in, it will download the new and updated files as needed. So we will continue with our business rules of every Monday, logging off the application, shutting down the computer, or restarting the computer, and then logging back in. This application is designed to work with Google Maps and be faster with Google Maps, and it's been our testing has shown that Google Maps actually responds faster than the local maps, and I know that's almost the opposite of what most of you experienced with the older version called Visual MCT, but we do find that Google Maps is much faster than the local maps. This application is customizable at the agency level, so all the icons you see, the colors that you see, are customized at the agency level and pushed down to every MCT, hopefully to maintain consistency throughout the department, so when you go from one station to another, one unit to another, you should see the same. There are new features, and we'll cover those in this broadcast or this recording. And what we have experienced, there are no more dropped layers in our current testing. I know in the legacy application we had seen the layers, specifically the hydrants or the GoVap or maybe the Preplan, being dropped. We are not seeing that in this application. These seem to be doing much better. Couple of current observations. Overall, this application seems much faster than our overall. OneSolution MCT, as we are calling it, seems to be more sensitive to satellite syncing, although a little bit more than others, which means that we need to ensure that the apparatus is truly outside an open view of the sky anytime you refresh this application or restart the computer and log in from scratch. And we'll talk about that more in this recording. But we do need to make sure we're outside when we restart the computer. Adding local layers on top of the Google Maps seems to make it a little slower. So the fewer local layers that you add on top of the Google Maps, the better. Like streets, there's no reason to add streets on top of Google Maps. They're there already. You're probably going to need to add footprints, but you will find that the footprints will slow it down just a little bit. Again, every layer that you add on top of the Google Maps makes it slower to draw and render back to you, so the fewer the better. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll talk about the login process, and we'll go right through. Okay, in a few short minutes, I'm hoping to give you a down and dirty of the new things, the things you need to know in this OneSolution MCT as compared to Visual MCT before we go in depth about all of them. The first is the login screen. Well, let's start with the icon that you click to launch it. You see it down here in the bottom. It's blue with a white star in the center. That's the OneSolution MCT icon. For a short period of time, you can use the OneSolution MCT or the Visual MCT. You cannot use both at the same time. So if you're going to go into the Visual MCT, you need to make sure you exit out of this altogether before you launch Visual MCT. In the very near future, you will not be able to use Visual MCT. We will migrate to OneSolution exclusively with no going back. Here, login credentials are the same. I do want to reiterate, under the station and the district, these should always be left blank. Never put in your station and your battalion in these district fields. The vehicle number should always be blank. So I'm going to enter my password here. Same as before, nothing changes. I'm going to be able to say log in, and then it logs in. By default, we're going to go to the unit status window. What's different here on the unit status is of all the groups that you are monitoring, any unit that gets dispatched on a call goes to the very top. So what you should expect is when you're dispatched on a structure fire, you and the 4 or 5, 6 other units will all be grouped here. These are color coded based on status. When you're dispatched, the font is red. When you're en route, the font is green. And when you have arrived, the font is blue. So doesn't really matter the order that you have your units or your groups in, unless no one is on a call, and then the order that you put the groups in will determine how you're going to see these here. The place to do that is over here to the right. There's a little hamburger menu in the top right hand corner. Here's the groups, the ones that are available that you're not selected, and the one you have selected. These by default, the Greensboro Fire Department profile default does Battalion 1 companies followed by Battalion 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And then behind Battalion 5 are the contract departments groups that we contract with, like 23, 55, 16, those units that we ride with, plus the reserve units, plus fire and life safety. So that's the default for the profile. You sort these much in the way we did before, drag and drop. That will determine the order that you're going to see them here when they're not on a call. Another big change on here are these are more like Excel columns. So if I click on status, it will sort. Notice the up arrow. You click again, you'll sort the opposite direction. You click one more time, it will release that. So, but by default, all calls are going to the top. All of these are sortable by the clicking, 3 clicks, ascending, descending, and then release. Goes back to the way it was. We do include a radio channel here, so you always see the TAC channel assigned on your call. And there is a filter button here where if you so desire, you could go in and filter on any of these columns by clicking in this call button here. If I'm interested in only seeing call number, let's say 132, then I could click in here and do 132 and only see that call. I can go back, release the filter in the top right here, and that will take me back to the default way. So that's the big change on the unit status window. The other change is if I click this or I get dispatched on a call, it's now a split screen. Your data is on the left, your map is on the right. That is the default setting. If you prefer to have map only, then click the map icon or the hyperlink here to go back in the bottom right. Hit the exit button. If you want to see all the event information, click the event hyperlink and you see all the event information. Click exit in the bottom right hand corner and you see the split screen again. You cannot control the split. It is a 50-50 split, and I cannot control what data elements I see over here. Notes, add a note. The way you flip these notes, however you leave them here, is the way they present in respect to ascending or descending. If you want your most recent on top, you need to flip the note so that they are that way and they will show in this window. So that's the big change here. On your map, it doesn't matter if, well, at this map, your layers are here, so you can pick your layers. There is a default for the Greensboro Fire Department profile, but you control those here. The layers, this takes the map to full screen. This is tracking, so if I want to track myself, I click this. This right here is a location search. Type in the address here. The address is, this is not just for the county, this is nationwide, so you can put in an address in another state and you will search that. This is a new feature. This is an AVL search, so if I'm looking for car 5 and I type in C5 and hit enter, if car 5 is broadcast in AVL, it will take me to car 5. It did that, but it came right back, and that's because I'm tracking myself. I'd have to release that track. Now go back to car 5, hit enter, and it takes me to car 5. You should see that the default map layer is Google. This application was designed to run with Google much faster than it did before and much faster than it does with the local layer. So if you're a user in the past that liked local layers because of speed, then you might want to give this a try, because local layers in this application is going to be slower than Google. The next icon here is Zoom to AVL and Event. It's only active when you're on an event. That's the only time you can click it. And if I activate this button, what it will do is take the map out to where it can see where I am and where I'm going to go. And as I get closer to that event, the map will automatically zoom in tighter and tighter without me having to touch it. The other four we go into detail later on in the video. Over on the left hand side of the data, the radio channel is here. The units assigned is here. Other than that, that's probably the big thing here that we'll get into details about other things. The icons across the top are configurable. If it's not something that you can press, it's not illuminated. In other words, I'm not on this call, so I can't check in route and I can't arrive. That's why these are kind of grayed out and not active. We put your out of service at the top, your available button that's at the top, and we talked about the profile and the map layers and the groups. If you want to take this back to the default profile, anytime it senses something changed in the map layers or the groups, it'll show up here and it allows you to restore it. So by clicking this, I will restore it right back to the way it was. So now the map layers are like it was when the Greensboro Fire Department profile was created. So that's a quick overview in 8 minutes or less of what's different compared to Visual MCT. If we've done our job correctly, hopefully there is an icon for OneSolution MCT on your desktop as well as down in the taskbar. Remember, icons on the desktop require double click, where icons in the taskbar only require a single. If we launch OneSolution MCT, if we're connected to the network and everything's running smooth, you should get the login screen like you see here. From the top of this login screen, you can go day mode or night mode before you log in. So that is here to the top right of the login screen. Username is going to be like the GFD. I'm going to log in GFD C16 with my password for that car number. The unit ID goes here. That's a little bit flipped. In the past, the unit ID was at the top. Pay attention here because it is asking for user credentials at the top first before the unit ID. The unit ID here in the center, followed by the first officer, which is required for all Greensboro units, and that goes here. I want to make a point to cover this because it has been seen many times with different units out there. Guys continue to put in a station and a district. This should always be left blank. Station and district should never be populated with a value. This will give negative unintended consequences to relocations. You can actually cancel your relocation by having values here, so they need to be blank. Do not populate this with your station and your battalion. Leave it blank. Do not put your vehicle ID. Do not put a second officer. Only the primary officer, the unit, the username, and the password are needed here. And don't check off duty work. If you do, what you will do is actually log in and show the unit basically out of service, which will not render calls for you. Click the login button and you're going to go to the unit status menu by default. Once a user logs in, you're presented with the default screen of the unit status. The unit status is somewhat different in the fact that any unit that you're monitoring, or any unit from a group that you are monitoring, when they're dispatched on an event, will move to the top of the screen. We are logged in for this presentation in a live environment, so as I go through, you're going to see things change, such as the unit that just cleared the call. We have one unit out of all the units that I'm monitoring, Engine 21, on an event at the top. Let's go through a couple of icons at the very top before we get into groups and things of that nature. The very top right hand of the screen, you can exit the application by clicking on the X. You can hit the restore button and make it smaller, or hit the maximize button and make it bigger. You can also minimize it. Typical Microsoft functions here: minimize, restore, and exit the application. So two ways you could exit. You could exit from the X up here at the top, or you can log out here. Both will take you out of the MCT. To the left of that, we have a refresh button. Remember, this is a web application, so it actually runs inside of Google Chrome. but not the Google Chrome that you have on your desktop. The reason Superion did this was they didn't want you to use the Chrome on your desktop, because if you browsed a web page with a different tab and exited out of Chrome, you could log yourself out of Visual MCT. So basically this application is packaged up with its own version of Chrome for which it runs inside of. If you think about Chrome and the fact that you can refresh a web page, think of this refresh icon as refreshing this application inside the Google Chrome package. This will be one of the first places, if you're having problems with this application hanging, or maybe you walk out to the truck and you've been dispatched but it's not here, one of the first things you would want to do is refresh the page. I warn you not to do this inside the station, because refreshing this could also break your connection with the satellites. Now, if you're having problems and the call's not there, you're going to have to do it. But just to refresh this page, you probably want to do it outside the station in good, clear, open view of the sky. So that's what that does. The other part is a local map feature, and I'll be 100% honest, I don't know what this does. When you click on it, it will take you to what appears to be another version of the MCT, or a version just with local maps, and you recognize some of this, but it has no function that I can find. Unless you lose total connection, let's say you lose internet connection and you're out in the field, this may be a place to be able to go find information on a local map. But to date, I have no function or reason to use that. Left of this is a great place for the young that have no problem seeing, and the old like myself that can't see. This is a zoom functionality where you can zoom in and zoom out without having to change attributes inside the application. So hitting reset will take it to 100%. You notice that when you zoom in or zoom out, not only do the font sizes change, but the buttons change as well. So the smaller you get this, the more information you get on the screen. The bigger you get this, the more information you lose on the screen. You run out of real estate and you just don't have room to see everything, therefore a lot of things get pushed to the right. So I'm doing this video on an CF34, which is the MCT in the Battalion Chief's vehicles. It actually lays out better on that vehicle than it will the MCTs that are in the engine and the ladder companies. So you can actually see information on this better than you can an engine or a ladder MCT. But I'm at 100%, so if you walk in one day and things are extremely small or extremely large, you want to go to the top right and change this to meet whatever needs you have there for seeing it more or less, or being able to see it. Unfortunately, I can't change the height of these rows. You can move, just like in the old version, you can move these fields left to right and reposition them, but you cannot change the height or the font size of what you see here. So that's kind of an overview of the buttons at the top. Down at the bottom, we have information about the GPS signal, and we have a green light here. I've seen green, yellow, and red. Just like in your current version, the last time it pulled information from the satellites, and then the number to the right of 3D indicates the number of satellites in orbit it is seeing. The most I've seen here is 12, and when it's 12, the accuracy rate is really, really tight, and that's ultimately what you want to see. We have it configured to where if it sees less than 8 satellites, it won't use that GPS or those Latin long. So this is to help reduce any AVL drift that may be happening on the map. To the right, this is where you change it from day-night. So if you want to see the daytime mode, that's your daytime mode there. This is your nighttime mode. If you're used to using the control key on the keyboard and the D on the letter D to control that, those functions still work as well. Control D will toggle it from day to night mode. And then you have the log out. And then over to the right, you have the status, whether you're online or not. I have seen this system offline. The word doesn't change to offline, I don't think, but the light will turn red. And the other thing I have seen is when this loses connectivity, especially when you're in a map area, you will get a red border around it until it will tell you that you're off the network. so you won't be able to find reconnect until you get better connection. It's assumed that you're having a Verizon or AT&T issue, and that's the reason you've lost connection. So that's a look at the buttons across the top, and we'll jump into talking about the unit status window in general. The function buttons at the top are different in a couple of ways. Number one, we can change the color, we can change the location, and we can change what buttons appear and do not appear. The other distinct difference between this and visual MCT is if the function button doesn't have a function right now, like if I'm not on a call, the en route button should not work, they're not illuminated. As you can see right here, right now, the en route, arrive, location, clear, and the dispatch button are all somewhat grayed out, which means they're not active. I'm clicking them here, actively clicking, and they're doing nothing. But you can see the unit status, the map, out of service are available for me to press. The available button is not, because my current status is available. If I click out of service and type code 8 here, and it's what you need to do is type. This is the other thing you're going to notice about this version is you can't just hit the down arrow. You have to at least start typing something before the up and down arrow key will work for you. So here I'm typing code 8. I'm going to hit enter, go down to the bottom and hit the send, and now I put myself out of service. Now notice the function button at the top. The out of service is no longer an active button, but the available is. So now I can click available and put myself back in an available status. Messages are just what they say, it's messages. Self-initiate is used by fire and life safety only, and if you accidentally click it, you'll see that the nature code, there's only currently 4 valid nature codes that could be used: a code violation, fire alarm testing, fire inspections, and an investigation follow-up. This is again only being used by fire and life safety, but they use it enough it did make its way to the very top. Favorites is a place to get to those buttons that didn't make their way to the top. We can add to these, so if you guys find that you're going to use something that's not here and you want to see it here, just let me know. Obviously we have a lot more room to add more buttons here. I purposely skipped the restore. I'm going to go back to that. The menu here, this is where you get to see all the buttons. These are the buttons related to the MCT. These are buttons related to status change. These are buttons related to CAD, and these are buttons related to the help menu. So if there's something here in CAD like held calls that you would like to see in the favorites, if it's not there already and you'd like to see it there, let me know, because I can move it there. At the end user level, you cannot change these buttons, you cannot move them, you cannot have favorites, and this maintains consistency across the board, that no matter which unit you're on, the look and feel is going to be the same. F6 is always going to be the same no matter where you go, F7, etc. There was some thought about these buttons and why they are where they are, and it has a lot to do with assumed hand placement, where you're going to put your hand on the MCT to stabilize before you possibly touch it with your thumb. So there is some thought process there. Not that it's dead set and can't move. We could do that, but this is we felt like this is a great place to start. Under the restore profile, you've heard me talk about profile before. Profiles change or things like what units we're monitoring here, what order they're in, and also on the map the layers of data that come by default. Those are things that are part of the default profile. You can go to restore profile and very quickly be able to change things. When the system knows that groups have been modified beyond the default and or map layers have been modified beyond the default, they will show here with a checkbox. So you saw earlier in this presentation we modified the groups. I think we put station 71 in front of station 1. Go back here. Yes, we see station 71 monitoring those units in front of station 1. If I go back to the restore and I uncheck map and leave groups checked and say restore, it'll put it back to the way it was in the very beginning. So now you see you got station 1 units followed by station 7, 14, 59, and 71 is way down here. If I go back to restore profile, you'll notice there is nothing here for groups because it knows that you're currently running the default profile. I'm going to restore the maps back to the normal fire profile as well, and we'll get into that later on. So a little clarity about the buttons at the top. This is the map that takes you to the large map, and we'll get into that here soon. The unit status window. Notice here at the top left I'm monitoring 181 total units, and that's based on the groups that I'm monitoring here. 2 places that you can change groups. Under the favorites, there is a section here called groups, and by the way, favorites is where I store those buttons that may be useful to you that did not get a place setting up on the very top. So groups will bring up this window here to indicate the groups that you can monitor. I will tell you that the default profile has every station in the city in it, followed by every county department that we contract with, followed by the reserve group at the very bottom that hosts the reserve units, followed by fire prevention, and here we have I think this is going to be emergency services here in reserve, followed by fire and life safety group here. The order at which these are presented here dictates the order at which you see them here if you're not on a call. Again, any unit that you're monitoring that's on a call is going to move to the top. Even if they're the very last group that you're monitoring, they're going to move to the top during the event. So if I do not want to see station 1 first, I would go to the favorites menu and go to groups, and I could resort these. Now, again, the default profile has the Battalion 1 companies first, followed by Battalion 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the current order you see them in. If I want to put Hazmat 71 first above Station 1, I drag and drop, click the Save button, and you will now notice on my screen that 71's equipment moves above Station 1. The other place that you can get to these groups is here in the top right hand corner. So if I click here, you see it takes me to the same place. You can move these groups out and move them to the left, but I will tell you, if you do that, then you will not see the status of those units, and if they're on a call, you will not see that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. If you're station 57, you may not want to monitor station 20. The chances of you riding an event with them and needing to see that status is probably next to none, and you can add them if you want. But keep in mind, it's not going to clutter your screen, because units, when you're on a call and other units are on a call, you're going to move to the top and you're going to be grouped there with that event. So it might be nice to leave all the city units, just regroup the ones that you run with most, so that day in and day out, when no one is on a call, you can see on this screen the units that you run with without having to scroll. So again, there's 2 places to get to this. You got the little icon, little hamburger menu here at the top right hand corner of the status window, and the favorites, it's also here labeled groups. Now this window here, the Excel, not Excel, but it's laid out like Excel, the unit status window is laid out like Excel, and the one thing you should know is you have more information. You now have a radio channel column, you have an incident or a case number column, you have the priority column, because every nature code is assigned a priority, and so you get to see those here. The primary officer that's assigned to this unit is seen here. Doesn't mean a lot to us because we use generic staff members logging in here, and so these are all pushed to the right by default. This event station says that this is where the call geographically occurred. So this call, no matter who's responding, has occurred in Station 10's first due territory. It's irrelevant of who's responding. Those by default, all those things are moved to the right, leaving you hopefully with this information and the radio channel. These are much like Excel in the fact that you can click between the two columns and actually click with your left mouse button and slide these over and make them bigger and smaller. The one change I have seen over the previous version is that if I drag this and make it really, really small, it will no longer truncate, but the system will actually wrap this text and make it a little bit wider. So you really don't lose it because of the wrapping feature. So I'm going to move this. I can move this back over. I can resort this. Keep in mind that at any point you can come and click this icon here to restore this grid back to its default location. Now I will tell you that the default location I have yet to figure out how to manage, and I don't think it can be managed at your level either, but it's probably not going to be exactly like it was the last time you did it. So if you get it set up just for your PC and you hit that restore, you're probably not going to like the way it goes back to, but you can always start over. The other icon here that you have is a filter icon. If you click the filter, it drops down a second row below the headers here, and what that allows you to do is, for example, is you can filter based on any of the data in these columns. In other words, if I went to the unit here and I clicked on this and I said I want to filter the unit that starts with, and I put the letter L here, then I would most likely filter and see every ladder that's in the city. I can clear that filter by backspacing over the L, and maybe I'm going to use R and see all the units. There's all my reserve units, the rescues, everything that starts with an R. Likewise, I could go into the station, and let's clear the R first. Backspace over the R, go into the station, and I'm going to use FPB. And most likely I'm going to see every fire and life safety unit because they're tied to the station called FPB. Battalion chief that may be on a large scale incident, or let's say you got two incidents going on at the same time and this screen is getting cluttered with two different structure fires, you find it hard to be able to monitor just yours. Notice this call number. This is very unique to that call. So if there's 10 units on this vehicle fire on Pin Oak, they'll all have call number 66. So if you've got two structure fires going on, two different call numbers, I can enter 66 here, and I will only show units that are assigned to that call. As units are added in CAD or removed in CAD or cleared automatically, as you just saw, they fall off of here. And when the last unit clears this call number 66, the screen will be blank. So we can release that filter by unchecking the filter over here. It releases that. Another thing you can do in this version is you can click, much like you do in Excel, where you can sort based on the status. So you see the arrow pointing up indicating it's sorting ascending. If I click again, it will change and point downward to show I'm sorting descending. And if I click once more, it releases the sort order. So now it's not sorted and it's back to normal. You can do that on any of the columns here. If I double click, or if I do a single click in one of these units, then it's going to take me and show me information about that unit record. If I click and hold it, I'm sorry, if I think it's a right mouse click, probably click and hold on the touch screen, but if I click and if I right mouse click, there is an option to send a message, to show the unit detail, or find on a map. Now you'll notice the first one I clicked was truck 71, and when I clicked truck 71 I didn't get show on a map, and that's because truck 71 is not broadcast in AVL. It knows that, so it removes that feature. But I could send a message, I could go straight to the map either way. On units that are active calls, if I click this, rather than going to the unit detail, it will actually take me to the incident. And this is what we're going to talk about next. It will get into that, but that does take you to the incident from there. So I think that's about all you need to see on that page. Station, keep in mind when you relocate, if engine 7 relocates to 14, this should change to station 14, much like it did before. I think we all know by now that if you don't have a station number here, you are guaranteed not to be recommended for dispatch. So we'll cover maps a little bit. Clicking on the F7 button at the top will take you to the map. When OneSolution MCT is rebooted, by default the Track Me feature is turned on, and that's what this icon is over here. In this video presentation we are using the default map layers. Map layers can be accessed from this icon here in the top left that says layers. They can also be accessed under the favorites here in map layers. Either one brings you to this point. Everything on the left side of the screen are things that are available but are currently not being selected, and everything on the right are the selected layers. So here we see that we are using AVL, which means that I can see the icons of all the trucks. If we happen to remove this, you wouldn't be able to see the icons. Fire station icons, the map icons for fire, which means if if there was a fire event somewhere on the map, there would be an icon. Doesn't necessarily have to be the event you're on. It's just an icon that represents events somewhere. That's what this does. The proposed urban loop up top gives you an idea of where the rest of the loop is yet to be constructed. Street closures represent the red line segment laying on the street. When someone in the 911 center closes a street, that does impact AVL unit recommend whether or not you're going to be recommended. Out of service hydrants, that's the hydrants that are very dynamic and being driven by the firehouse data. Hydrants in itself, this is basically the header showing the hydrants. I'm sorry, not the header, but actually showing the actual hydrants, the color-coded hydrants. This is the part of the GoVAP, do not enter, the trust, the signal 10, the basement, and the caution. All 5 of these are GoVAP values. And then airport staging entrances, pre-planned sketch, and situation awareness. Over here on the left, this is more of the local layers that you can turn on. There's your building footprints, city limits. Again, as we said earlier in the presentation, the more that you add over here to the left on top of this, the slower it's going to run. I do want to bring attention to these hydrants in the uppercase. These are those red large hydrants that are not color coded based on available water. That is considered a local layer. It most likely will slow things down. They will be large, and they, as you have seen in the past, they show at a higher altitude where they can tend to clutter your screen. I don't like them personally. I don't recommend them, and that's why they're not part of the default. We're using the others instead for this point. At this point, then we get into law information. We get into railroad streams, streets, redundant because you have the streets for the Google map, but if you want the local streets, these are here. This is showing the surrounding counties. It's basically a border around Guilford County and other surrounding counties. The trail markers, the water points, the things that you're used to seeing. I don't think there's anything here you haven't seen before. Pressurized mains. These are all the things you can move over to become part of the default. Now, if I'm going to hit cancel here, I'm going to take you over to this area, and this is where you can turn them on as well. This is probably the best way to turn these on. But you have these headers that says basically live data, which if I accidentally check here, this will turn every layer of data on. Probably not something that you want to do. And if you click it yet again, it will turn every layer of data off. So the best way to resolve this is to go up to your restore profile and say, I expected that to say you wanted to restore your profile back, but it did not. So let's go to the unit status. Let's go back to the map. We see that everything's still turned on. I'm going to go to restore profile. Here we go. There's the map layer. I'm going to tell it to restore, and I'm going to go back to the unit status. I'm hoping this is going to restore. Go back to maps, and it has not. Alright, so that was not anticipated. So let's try this. Let's try the refresh or the restart. It says restart, it's actually a refresh, and let's see if this will fix our problem. Let's go back to the map, and it looks like it may have. Yes, by doing the refresh, it actually knew that we had restored those. So there's a good reason to do the refresh. Again, I would try to do this outside, but If you need to refresh it inside, go for it. Just understand that your next call outside, your next call may not result in auto and route working correctly until it can get synced back up with the satellites. That's what I have seen a little bit of, not to say it's going to happen every time. So you got your live data, you got your layers. This is basically a header here for all of these layers. If you click it, it will collapse those, and then I can see fire information. I can see law EMS information. There's the law information, and then map icons, all of these things that you saw earlier that we were turning on or had loaded up to turn on by default. Here, these are the GoVap. Notice I don't have this GoVap checked, but if I did, it would turn all those on. They're on by default. The hydrants, if you need the labels, here's the labels. Here's the pre-planned sketch. Here's the spill response. Now you'll notice some of this information is turned on, but I'm not seeing this on the over here on the map. And this is a known bug that we have written up and turned in. At this altitude, I should be seeing GoVap and information like that, but it's not showing on this map. And what I have learned is it's only not showing up when I click this map function here. If I go back to the unit status and I go to car 1, or let's say engine 1, and I click and say, I'm sorry, if I right mouse click and say find on map, you will notice it basically goes to this same window, but here I'm starting to see GoVap and hydrants. Again, this has been turned in as a bug. I'm waiting on it to be resolved. I'm going to scroll down here. I do not want those hydrant labels turned on because it's just cluttering up my screen, so I'm going to turn them off, and there you see that information. I'm going to slide over here a little bit. It should see GoVap information in this area. Here you're starting to see a little GoVap around Revolution Mill. You can see a little bit more building footprints as far as Google is concerned when you're in the day mode instead of the night mode. That's the only negative thing about being in night mode. I personally prefer it day in and day out, the night mode, but when it comes to seeing the Google footprints and images, I don't. And this is why I said earlier you might want to turn on the built-in footprints, because then you actually do get a good footprint in day mode and night mode. I'll flip it there. You can still see those. It does take it just a split second longer to load up, but all in all it's not too bad. So that's a little bit about map and units and maps and the known problems we have here. I will say I can't show it to you now because there's not a call in the queue, but if a unit was on a call and we click to go to that call, the map that gets shown on the right hand side, and we'll probably see it a little later on the presentations here, that map will contain GoVap and the color-coded hydrants and the pressurized mains. All of that information is available to you. The bug is it's not available when you go to maps. So if I go here, I'm not going to see that hydrant information, but I can kind of do the same thing by going to unit status and find my unit and right mouse click and say find on the map. It looks like the same map, but I'm starting to get the GoVap information there. There we go with the hydrant labels. I'm going to restore that profile because we've changed the map layers. I'm just going to click that. I'm going to click refresh, and from here you're probably, if I go to find on map, I'm going to have those hydrants without the labels. That's what I assumed I would see. So the map buttons, a couple of things you're going to notice you're missing right off the bat is there's no zoom and there's no pan icons over here. This is not the zoom like to zoom in the old version, and that's because it is a web-based application. It has to work on phones as well as tablets as well as computers. So the pan feature now is basically, and it's hard for me to show this because I'm going to simulate using your finger, but your finger against the monitor itself, if I touch and hold and drag the monitor left or right with my finger, that is basically the pan. The zoom is if you take your finger and you click at any one place. Let me back out here for a second. If I click at any one place, the system is going to do two things. If I click ladder 5, it's going to zoom in one level and take ladder 5, or the place that I clicked, and put it in the center of the screen. If I click again, it's going to recenter and zoom in one more time and one more time. If I take my finger and I hold it against the monitor for like 2 seconds, you're going to see what I can't emulate here, but you're going to see this ring appear around your finger, and when you release it, it's going to back out one level. So for each time you hold your finger against the monitor for 2 seconds, you'll see a ring drawn around your finger. If you release it, it backs out, much like that right there. Likewise, the left and right mouse buttons on your keypad will zoom in and zoom out. Once you have touched the screen and made the map active, left button will zoom in, right button will zoom out. So that's the difference between the pan and the zoom features in this version. The other thing that you see is all these icons over to the left. We've seen what this does. This does the layers. Here are all the layers. Press it to make it go away. This makes things go full screen, and it's going to extend out where you can see the entire city. This icon here tracks you. So if I click tracking, it will take me to a predetermined altitude, and from that altitude it will follow you. This blue icon that represents me here, the map will stay where it is, and this blue icon will move about the map up until I reach the outer edge of the map, either left, right, top, or bottom. And when that happens, the application will recenter the map. Now, one thing I like about this version that's a little bit different than the last is if I want to back out a couple of clicks, in the old version it would stay here for about 2 seconds and it would go back to that predetermined altitude. But in this version, what I'm finding is it will maintain this altitude so long as this icon that represents me doesn't work its way to the outer edge. As soon as that icon, let's say I traveled Church Street south into town, as soon as that icon representing me makes its way here to the very bottom, it's going to reposition and take me back to that predetermined altitude, which is going to be, you know, that 800 foot, that altitude there. So if I'm out here monitoring my battalion, like 3 clicks out, you most likely are going to be able to move about your entire battalion and just watch yourself here without it zooming back in. So that is a neat feature. Keep in mind, this track feature does not work if you are not broadcasting AVL. So if you're not broadcasting AVL, it's not going to work. The next one is a search feature, and this is a search feature for addresses, and it's not specific to Greensboro. I've actually searched addresses in other states. So if I was doing 3700 Cotswold and I hit enter, if it's in this city, I'm finding it went right to Cotswold Terrace. If I was searching something in, let's say, Wilmington, you would want to do the address, insert a comma, and Wilmington. It's pretty forgiving too, because as you see here, I purposely typed Cotswold incorrect, but it had some self-correcting in there. I did Costwold, and it found Cotswold out of that and took me to that area. So the search feature is pretty nice. Like I said, it will get you most anywhere in the city. I mean in the nation with that address, because it's searching against the Google database. To make this go away, click this this icon here and make it go away. The one below it is an AVL search, and this is searching for units. So if I'm here and I'm curious as to where car 5 is, I can type C5 and hit enter, and it will go out and it'll find that unit. It will only find a unit that's broadcasting AVL. So if the unit has this MCT turned off, or that unit is not broadcasting AVL, it will not be seen. So I'll go back here and type in engine 1, hit enter, and it will take me back. I don't think it will do multiple. If I type engine 1, comma, engine 4, nope, I'm not getting anything here. So to make that go off, I press the button and I release that search. This icon here is not currently illuminated. This is a brand new feature only found in this version. We've never seen it before. This icon will only become active when you're tied to an event. And what this does, when you press this, it will take the map and zoom into a level that will keep you and your destination or your call on the same map. So if engine 1 is running a call, let's say in 20's territory, the map will back out to where it can see engine 1 and the call in 20's territory. And as engine 1 travels closer and closer to the call, the map will automatically zoom in to keep you and your destination in the map view. The only thing I don't like about this feature is as you make your way to the scene, this feature will zoom the map in so tight it will almost, I think it will zoom into about this level right here. It's hard to tell what's around you. In other words, once you make it to the scene, you're right in front of it, you're zoomed in so tight you can barely see other units coming, other units that are around you, or the hydrants that are around you. I have submitted a request that they change that, or at least allow me to declare how tight I can zoom in, because ultimately I wouldn't want it to zoom in any tighter than this so that we could see surrounding hydrants. The last 4 buttons here on the left are probably going to be your least used buttons of all, but I'm going to go ahead and cover them just so you know what they will do. This button here is labeled PIP, which is a point and a polygon. What it's designed to do is once you highlight it like that and you click somewhere on a map, and I'm going to click right here on the Station 1 property, it's going to drop a pin to show where you clicked, and up here on the left it's going to bring up information about the different zones, the law zones, the EMS, the fire, and information about each one of those. What might be informative to you is the agency you're in, the battalion, GFD1, the GeoProx, which we call the fire demand zone. This B312 is the actual GP, or the GeoProx in CAD. We refer to it as a 2312. They translate to be the same thing, but this is the fire demand zone 2312. And the response plan for this area is the GFD response plan, the normal response plan that gets 3 engines, 2 ladders, and a battalion chief, and it's in Fire Station 1's territory. So that's what the point and polygon does. Once you drop a pin, to make that go away, you just click it one more to drop that. The next one is the measure tool. Once you click the measure tool, you click the left mouse button to begin a point, you draw a line, and if you want to stop there, you need to double click, and then you will get your analysis. That line segment's 418 feet, so it's not going to calculate, it's not going to show it to you until you actually do a double click. So if I do another, I want to see the distance between this hydrant and this hydrant. I clicked at the beginning, I clicked at the end, and now I'm going to double click the end. 455 feet, you notice it brings it to the center. I can also do a box, so I click here, here, click, click, and there you get 880 total linear feet around the perimeter. So that may be useful as well. I'm going to click it one more time to unselect it, and then I'm going to go to the identify. The identify is used when there's icons on the map that represent events. So we're going to back out here a little bit and see where we may see an icon representing an event, and the identify tool will tell us a little bit about it. We have 17 over here on an event. You see the blue icon, the teardrop icon. If I take this identify tool and just click on it, we should get a pop-up that says there's the address, here's the outside fire nature code, it's a fire service and the units that are involved, information about the caller. This acts as a hyperlink which will take you directly to the event, as it did there. We can go back to the map, and so that's what the identify tool is. If you were a department or an agency that was looking at multi-agency, in other words, you were looking at events for fire, police, and EMS, that might be useful to be able to click on it and see what's going on, but most likely you're going to be aware of all the incidents going on in the area. The last is the layer info. This probably will never be used. I can't find a good way to use this. I understand what it was attempting to do. But let's say we click on the layer info, and now it's asking you what layer of information do you want to get information for. and by default we see fire station icon is chosen here. If I click OK and click on the fire station, it was designed so that it brings back information that's in the data set about this fire station. This might be useful in the future for information about fire hydrants or pre-plans, but currently there's no metadata, so to speak, in there that will be of benefit to us at the current time. So once you click the icon, you've got to declare what information am I looking for. So we could go down to hydrants, but even if you clicked on a hydrant, you're not going to get information about that hydrant. And I'll just to prove the point here, let's go to this map where we can actually see the hydrants. I'm going to zoom in one more time, click on the information. I'll go down here and click on hydrants. We're going to make that the active radio button, click OK, and now I'm going to click on this hydrant. You notice it's going to give me an error message because we have not included that information. So for the dynamic layers, the hydrants, the GoVAP information, things of that nature that we're overlaying on top of Google, it's going to give you this error. There's no data there for you. The other information is going to be limited, but that's the purpose of that. So that wraps up all the icons on the map. Down at the bottom is your latitude, longitude of your current location if you're broadcasting AVL, your speed, your heading, what heading you're moving in if you're moving, and the last pole of the satellites, which should be every 2 to 3 seconds. Over to the right is the plus and minus, conveniently located to zoom in, zoom out with your thumb once you grab the monitor. And then the top is the map with terrain options. And you've also got the satellite, and with the satellite you can turn street labels on or off. So that was turned on. You notice now it's turned off, but if I turn it back on, you get actually a street overlay with some street names on there. So those are the two options. This little man here is designed to, if you drag the man down to the street view, if Google Maps has, or Google has actually gone in and taken a video of that, you can get the street view and pan around and see that. That may be advantageous. Again, I think that was there in the old version. Nothing real new there. So that kind of wraps up the information about the map icons. We'll move on to the next. All right, so we want to cover the dispatch window, the default dispatch window. And I start here from the unit status. Again, just to reiterate the colors you see here in this scenario, engine 7, ladder 7 have been dispatched. Therefore, their font color is red and will remain red until they check en route. Once they check en route, their icon or the text will go to green, and then when they arrive, it will turn blue. If I choose to look at either one of these incidents, all I have to do is double click the incident, and it will take me to the split screen. I said double click, it's actually a single click. It'll do both, either way. But it takes me to the incident, and this is the default dispatch window where you have the event information on the left, you have map information on the right. This is the default. The only way we can change this to go to either a full event or full map is to do a global change. But by default, this is the way it's going to be for right now. If you do want to see all the event information, you can click this hyperlink here, this blue hyperlink that says event. This will push the map out to the right, take this full screen and show you all the event information. But you'll see here pretty quick that this doesn't contain a whole lot more than the event did when it was a split screen. Currently, I do not have the ability to change the representation. It's a 50-50 split. On this CF54 Panasonic Toughbook here that we're displaying it on, it would actually be better if we could bring the map to the left and have it more of a 60-40 split. 40% the event information, 60% the map. But that's not an option that they're giving me right now. But again, if you want the event, click the event. Map works the same way. If I click here and go to map, it will spread out and go full map. I click the exit in the bottom right hand corner, it will go back to my split screen. My notes are here, so if I want to see the screen full of notes, then you can see here. I will say that the note orientation, the ascending, descending is fixed in this version. So whatever I leave this in, ascending or descending, by flipping the notes here is what it seems to be remaining. So here 1354.31 versus 1555, so I've got the oldest on top. And so when I go to exit, you'll see you see the first and what is the oldest note on the top. If I want to flip that, I've got to go back to notes, I've got to click the flip button and then go back to exit, and then my most recent note will stay here on the top. Now I'm not on this event, so what you cannot expect is you cannot expect these notes to automatically update if you're not on the event. If I added myself to this event, it would not change. The appearance would not change. The only thing that would change is I would start getting notes as they come from CAD. And if I did, you would see any information that has changed to be highlighted with green to indicate that had been updated. You see it went on the map here, it went to the center, or it went to the event identified by here. You can see engine 7 is on scene. My GoVAP information, my hydrant information, all of that information is visible at this level. And then all the icons that we saw previously on the map exist here. Probably one of the most important, remember, is this icon here that's currently grayed out. But if I click on it, if I was on an event, I would be able to click on it. This window would back out, keeping me and the destination point all on the same map. So I'm going to show you a call that car 4 was on where we played around with this in real time on an event. That's going to follow this little short recording, and we're going to illustrate that. So I think I've covered everything here. If you're on the event, the dispatch button up here at the top will flash as well and may make a sound indicating there's new information, but you should see the information pop in here automatically. Your TAC channel is here, units involved is here. As units fall off or get added to this, this will update as well. And add notes goes here if you want to add a note to the event. I think you actually have that ability too in the notes section, so if you're looking at the notes, you can add notes directly from here. You don't have to go in the notes to add notes. You can just click them here to add your note directly into the event. You notice on my screen I have it in Route and Arrive button. If you wanted to add yourself to the call, you could do that from here. You're not going to see that on the engines and ladders. This is controlled by some permissions that are tied directly to the Freedom app. So units that don't have access to the Freedom app are not going to see the en route and arrive, which is going to force the policy of having to get on the radio and add yourself to the call. The units that would expect to see this would be all of Fire and Life Safety, all the battalion chiefs, administrative chiefs, Car 33, and Air 1 and Rescue 5. Those units would see the en route and arrive, but engines and ladders will not. So we're going to follow up with a demo of Car 4 riding event where we used this zoom to AVL feature when he was traveling to a fire alarm. Car 4 is on this event and is looking at where engine 17 and hazmat 72 have arrived. He clicks on the zoom to AVL button. It backs out so where it can find him on Joseph Bryan Boulevard and the call all in the same screen. To get back to the event, probably one of the easiest ways is to go to the unit status, double click or click on the call. That takes him back to the center screen here, and you'll see that he's going to zoom in just so he's looking for pre-planned sketch information. This is residential area. You don't see anything here. So now a couple things can happen. He can go back to zoom to AVL. It'll back out to where it finds him and the call all on the same screen. If you go up and click the track button, which is the third button down, the map will go to him and it will release the zoom to AVL button. You can't have both of those on at the same time, so it's either one or the other. But again, the easiest way to get to the unit status or to the call is to go up to unit status and click on the event again. For this demo, I've added myself to a call that engine 17, Car 33, and a police officer were on. 17's actually went ahead and cleared the event. So you don't see them here. If I click the dispatch button at the top, you see there was new information, and the units that are involved gets highlighted in green to indicate Car 33 is now Car 16 is now added to the call. That was the change there. We've got the TAC channel here on the screen, and then again 17 has departed. We can back out and probably see that. as we'll back out here in just a second. But the one feature that I wanted to show was the new PAR feature. The PAR feature is over on the right. You see the icons that are to the right over there, and you can see the premise notes, the history, but you see the fire button down at the very bottom is not really illuminated because there is no pre-plan for this property. It's residential, but there's a PAR button, a personal accountability report, that used to be embedded in the pre-plan, and that's been taken out and added separately, so you can still do a PAR on an event even if there's no pre-plan associated with it. So basically what happens here is when you click on the PAR button, it will go out and fetch all the people that are in Firehouse for the units involved in this incident. You'll see here car 16, car 33, and you see Bridget Crump is associated with car 33, which is correct. There's no one associated with car 16 because I'm doing this on a weekend when I am not in telestaff associated with car 16. But by default, you see the tab at the top that says all assigned units. If you just want to see the units that are on scene, the center tab there will show just the on scene units and the staff that are associated. Or you can do the tab to the right that shows the units that have been dispatched or en route. So there's the on scene units only, which is only car 33 because at this point in time I've not arrived. And then the units that are dispatched or en route is still me because I'm en route. So that's the PAR. It changes as units get added or dropped from the call. So you can click on that button at any point in time. It's only as good as your Firehouse records, which is only as good as your telestaff records. I do not expect a split trade. In other words, a trade that's going to be split by 12 hours or however many hours. I think what's going to happen here is you're going to see both employees, the one that's working the morning and the one that's working the night. So I really don't expect it to be up to date as of this very moment of who's there. Much like when you do the fire report in Firehouse, you see both employees. You have to pick the one that was on the call. So that's the PAR report separated outside the pre-plan report. The fire pre-plan will illuminate just like in the past where a record exists. So you see here this address of 300 East Meadowview has a pre-plan associated with it. The fire button's illuminated on the right. Again, if your MCT has run out of real estate, maybe because you have it zoomed in a little bit tight, you may have a hamburger menu down here at the bottom indicating that some of these buttons on the very bottom are there. That's not the case here, but if I click the fire button, what's going to happen is it's going to take you to the Preplan interface. It lays out much like it did in the past where these tabs only illuminate if they contain data within the Preplan. The contacts, all of this information is going directly back to Firehouse in a very dynamic, real-time type of way. Even the attachments are no longer stored locally on your computer. Therefore, they have to pull across the Verizon network or whatever vendor we're using. If we click once on this footprint, you'll notice we get a thumbnail view, and from there, if you click the thumbnail view, it will actually open up in a third-party app on your computer. In this case, it's just using the Windows Photo Viewer, and it opens it up in full view. There's only one here, but again, thumbnail at first, and then you click it again, and it'll open in full view in a third-party app. So flow information, hydrant information. You'd have to click the second hydrant to get the information down below to change. Not a lot changed here other than the attachments are coming across the network and not reaching into the local drive. The beauty of that is if you update a pre-plan this morning and you go in and you attach it to Firehouse, you're going to be able to access it immediately and not have to wait for it to go through that conversion process, which could take 2 to 3 weeks. So they should be there immediately. So that's about all I can say about the fire button. It does live here. It also lives in the area where if you're going to go out and do a location check, we'll just show that now. Right now, we do 1514 North Church Street. It's going to give me a choice, as always, between Greensboro and Burlington, and I hit send. You should have a fire button here as well, and right there it is. There's your fire button for 1514 North Church Street with the attachments and all the information. Troubleshooting. I'm going to throw an image up here, and this was an image taken with a cell phone of an MCT that had lost its Verizon connection. And when it did, the application, when at least on the maps, was showing this, that there was no network connection and local maps were in use. We see here, by looking at the very bottom, down here in the right hand corner, it says online status. Well, it says online, but the icon is illuminated red, indicating it is not connected. The other thing that I can see is here, you see the little M for net mobility is disconnected. We don't have the green status light there. Those are indications that net motion is either crashed or Verizon has crashed, and in this case it was Verizon, yielding no connection with net motion, which wouldn't allow the application to connect. If I get rid of that, here is the my MCT currently that is currently connected. Online status here is connected. You see net motion is up and running. When I hover over it, it says it's connected. If I click on it, it says it's connected as Greensboro NC GVO Fire Mobile. So those are the things that you're looking for. If you walk out and you've been dispatched on an event, it hasn't made its way to the MCT yet, the first thing I would do is go to the top, hit the refresh application button, and then I would look down, make sure you're connected here, and make sure the net mobility is connected. If either one of these, if this is red, most likely it's coming from net mobility. It's most likely going to require a restart. But if the net mobility is green and this is green and you don't have your call here, either they haven't sent it yet or this needs to be refreshed, which hopefully this will do it here. Remember in the previous slides, or the previous part of this video, we talked about how to use caution when hitting the refresh. You most likely want to do it outside, and that's because a lot of times this will throw the computer out of sync with the satellites, and auto and route may not work correctly. But if you're on a call, most likely you're out and about anyhow. I would hit the refresh button. So those are the troubleshooting things when you're having problems with your MCT. And as always, a reboot will fix most items.